Hey, I'm J.R. Lay, and welcome back to the Level Up Business Podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Rob Robinson, CEO of Taylor White, who shares what it means to lead from a foundation of faith, foundation of family, and a foundation of deep self-awareness. That's because knowing who you are as an entrepreneurial leader is just as important as knowing your strategy. Together, Rob and I are going to explore what it means to build on the rock instead of building on sand in the age of AI. We're also going to talk about how Rob is mentoring the next generation of leaders by helping them build lives around what matters most to them. So, if you are a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are a builder at the heart like Rob is, this episode is a reminder that success isn't found in status. Success is found in service, in stewardship, and the legacy that you leave behind. So if you're thinking about legacy, if you are a visionary B2B entrepreneur and you want to transform your past experience, your experiences, some of the most valuable assets that you have as an entrepreneur, if you want to transform those experiences into IP that elevates your influence and increases your income, send me a text right now, 832-240-1922. That's because I want to teach you. I want to show you how you can turn video content just like this into a published book that monetizes your unique wisdom. Now, let's get into the show. Let's learn, let's grow, let's level up together with Rob. Rob, welcome to the show, buddy. I am so glad to be chatting with you today because you have been making moves both physically, literally, and before we get too far into that, what is good in your world right now, personally and or professionally, to start off on a positive note?
Wow, that's a great intro. Thanks, JR. Yeah, what's good in my world right now is, this is the first week of school for our two youngest boys, and it's a brand new school district for them. And as you can imagine, the excitement is in the air. Today's meet the teacher or walk the creek, depending on which school you're at. And so, what's good in my world is we've made a move as a family, literally, and my boys are excited about their new friends and their new teams and their new schools. So that's big. And then professionally, our firm is bucking the national trends in our space, and in an environment where organizations are seeing significant headwinds and challenge. It's very challenging to create growth. We're growing, and we're growing significantly. So I would say those are kind of the two biggest things that come to mind off the bat.
What do you attribute that to? I mean, with the work you're doing, why do you feel like you're bucking the trends when everyone else is hitting these headwinds and they might be slowing down? You're taking a completely different path. What do you attribute that different path to?
That's a great question. I think what it really boils down to is that we have a strategy. We know who we are. We've made investments. We've committed the capital and the time and energy to be excellent in our craft. And I think people recognize that. And when there's challenges or limited demand, or limited need for our services, I think firms tend to lean our way when looking for someone to kind of fill the gap and take care of their business needs. And so, we're a year into owning this business. I'm the CEO of Taylor White, and we're based in Tampa. And the first 6 to 9 months was really a honeymoon period of getting to know each other and building trust and kind of setting ourselves up for the real implementation of our strategy. And I think we haven't wavered from that commitment in that strategy. And we've made decisions as a leadership team that have really benefited our employees and positioned them to be experts in their space. And what's come along with that is opportunity, compensation, growth. And so I know that now, that we're making more strategic moves that maybe require a little bit more of a lift, we've got everyone's collective buy-in. And that's translated into momentum.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is if you roll your thoughts back, you said we have a strategy, but I think you said something more important. You said we know ourselves. It makes me think of some of the writing from Sun Tzu with the Art of War. And one of the things Sun Tzu wrote is, "Know the enemy and know thyself. You need not fear the result of 1,000 battles." That idea of knowing yourself, it's also interesting too, because if you think about Taylor White and how it's positioned, your tagline is 3 words: "We know accountants."
Yep.
So it's, you know yourself, you know accountants, and I want to unpack both sides of that coin right there. Knowing yourself, who who is Rob Robinson?
Oh, wow. How much time do we have? I think I'm a really simple guy. I think the biggest thing that if we really start fundamentally at who I am, I'm a follower of Christ. I'm a husband. I'm a father. Um, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an investor. I'm a leader. And um, you know, I could pontificate on all those things for quite some time, but um, I think one of the things that's really benefited the business community that I'm a part of and my colleagues and those that work with me and for me is the fact that I'm not an employee or an entrepreneur first. And so that doesn't define me.
Mm-hmm.
It never will. And I hope that other people take a similar stance in our firm because there's so much more to life than the success or lack of success that you see in the business community. So, and I think that because those, first several priorities are supported by my ability to be successful in my business endeavors, they obviously carry a lot of weight, right? It carries a lot of weight to do well because I think the better that I do in my work, the better I can fulfill my obligations in those other areas. But they don't define me, that's for sure.
I think it's a really great point. I mean, I think about my 23-year journey as an entrepreneur, and in the past, my success, my identity, I would say, was tied to my success. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that, and it's interesting, you bring up your faith. I mean, last week on Sunday, we were exploring Ecclesiastes, and one of the thing was is the writing was around vanity, and it was vanity of vanity. But he got into the business side of things, and it's almost like you toil, and you can't have rest at night. Your mind is always anxious. And I said, no, it's because it was attaching to the success of the business or
Hmm.
not.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I was building my house on sand, and so when those winds and the rain comes, that sand's gonna get washed away. It's not a strong foundation, but when you build on the rock,
Hmm.
you can withstand the storms of life, withstand the storms of business. And I think it's interesting. You recently, thinking about like who is Rob Robinson, you recently posted on LinkedIn. He said, "We all have the power to become someone new starting now."
Hmm.
And it was, you were reflecting on an experience with your brother-in-law over the 4th of July. And he had made a comment. I'm not usually the person who jumps in to help. And it was an incident on the lake, and you went and helped, he helped. But he goes, maybe I am now. And who who are you becoming? Because I think it's like when I think about, there's 3 things. It's like who we were, who we are, and who we're continuously becoming from a future self that perhaps
Hmm.
only we know exists, perhaps maybe only God knows exists within us, and it's very hard for anyone else to see who that future self is.
Hmm. Oh, there's a lot baked into that too, and maybe I'll focus on one area because I think this is for me um, a big part of why I do what I do and why I do it the way that I do it is what I hope I become in a business sense is a mentor, an enabler, a a conduit, a quicker conduit to success. What I would like to see kind of my business ventures evolve into is investment in the next generation.
Mm,
I think I do that maybe from a little bit from a selfish perspective, that I had wished that someone had grabbed me early in my career and said, "Hey, Rob, you've developed a skill set, right? Let's take it and turn it into something that can build, a company or a family business or generational wealth or what have you." And I think a lot of individuals, have a desire similar to that. They just don't know really where to start.
mm.
They don't have access to the resources, the people, the structure, the vision. And so, in a business sense, who would I like to become? I'd like to become a mentor that helps, guide several young, aspiring individuals to kind of take that next step in their career, maybe much earlier than I did. So that's one piece. The second piece is, I've got a large family, and I hope that I have the chance to become a grandfather.
Mm.
I hope I have a chance to, continue to influence through my parenting, maybe in a little different way, rather than making the decisions for my kids. I hope I have the ability to influence and guide and counsel them through life. Um, I had a decent representation of that through my parents, and I want to do the same for them. So I think those are kind of the two things right now that are on my mind. One, more secular than the other, but those are kind of the two things that I hope I get to become.
I hear them intertwine, though.
Mm-hmm.
You use the word guide and influence. And if we think about, you've got the personal and the professional, but come back
Mm-hmm.
to the professional for just a moment. What do you know now that you wish you would have known a decade, 2 decades ago, perhaps even three, as
Mm-hmm.
you were just getting started on this journey yourself, that
Mm-hmm.
you could transfer that wisdom back to the next generation to help them accelerate, to help them avoid painful pitfalls?
Yeah.
What would that be?
There's a lot, but I actually just had this discussion with someone, and I think the biggest thing that I wish I knew at the beginning of my career is that a dollar is a dollar, and it really, as long as you're not compromising your integrity or your belief system to pursue that dollar, it doesn't really matter how sexy the business is that secures it. I
Mm,
think I got caught up early in my career in, that's not for me. That's not my brand. That's not who I want to be. And I've found that some of the most successful, rewarding, and genuine people that I've met are small business owners of what I would call less than sexy businesses, right? And so, whether that business is small or grows to be very large is in my mind irrelevant. But there's an individual that I'll kind of mask for confidentiality reasons,
sure.
but that I always looked up to and saw as very successful, even though I kind of was on the periphery of their world. And it wasn't until like 18 months ago that I realized that he built all his wealth through the trash business.
Wow.
Like he owned a trash company.
Mm,
And I never in a million years would ever think or consider, especially early in my career, being in the trash business. Like it just felt, less than, right? And I know that, it shows some immaturity on my part at the time, but I was immature. And so I think the biggest thing that I would tell myself is, you know, just like the generic components of work, um, just because it looks like work and it might be a little dirty doesn't mean that it's bad. I know there's one major regret that I have in my career where I interviewed for a job and I thought that the components of that role were because I historically worked in the professional sector, they had more of a commercial tint to them.
hmm
I turned my nose up at it, and that probably was a bad decision. So I think that's one of the things that I would tell my younger self is, some of these, traditionally blue collar style roles and companies are some of the most consistent, stable, economically resilient organizations where you can create significant structure and influence for people. You can help people build lives and careers and livelihoods and families. And you can do it all while accomplishing your entrepreneurial goals.
Your point on the unsexy jobs,
Yeah.
the the quote unquote the dirty jobs, and I think
Yeah.
about that TV series back in the day. How interesting is it that those jobs might actually become the most sexy jobs, the most sexy businesses to start, the most sexy businesses to grow in the age of AI? I
Mm-hmm.
was actually reading from Marcus Sheraton, who posted on LinkedIn earlier this morning. He's also been a guest on this podcast. He said, "Sign of the times. My 21-year-old electrician son told me yesterday, quote, I had a new guy start with me today, 35 years old, knows nothing about electrical work, but eager and willing to learn." Marcus asked his son why. His son said, quote, he believes trade work is the smartest choice for job security in the future, so he's all in now. And I'm curious when you think about, like, come back to the other side of the coin I was mentioning before, accountants. When you think about the world of accounting, and perhaps even through the lens of the entrepreneurial world,
Mm-hmm.
what is a misconception that people have that perhaps other entrepreneurs watching or listening to this podcast might have about accountants?
Huh. Well, there's a lot. I would say the biggest one is um, that accounting and accountants themselves are stale people. They don't have personality, right? They'd prefer to be, and there are a number that do fall into that category, but that they'd prefer to be, in a back room with, you know, a dimmer light and no one around them and just leave me alone.
Right.
I think there's also a perception um, that pursuing accounting is a boring pursuit. Um, And I would argue that it's one of the areas where you actually get a look under the covers of everything going on in a business, and it's a
Mm,
great foundation for entrepreneurship and executive leadership. Um, I do think that in the age of what yesterday was the American Idol generation, today might be the YouTube generation. Everyone's going to be an influencer or have their own YouTube channel, right? There's no question that that's a lot more fun
mm,
than staring at a spreadsheet all day, right?
hmm.
Um, but the foundational elements that an accounting background and an accounting career provide to an individual
Yeah.
are tough to duplicate.
What do you see as the possible impacts that AI might have on the accounting field? Thinking about just the shift of,
Hmm.
we'll say, you mentioned the unsexy dirty jobs before, but then it's like you think about, like, my business. I mean, historically, before I launched Level Up Business, we we had a marketing agency, and that's something that I was thinking a lot about myself, which I think inspired me to make this shift, to make this leap, to launch Level Up Business, to unlock the wisdom of other people that does not exist in a large language model. Because I think you mentioned before, even your accountant, your team, that you got a lot of expertise rooted
Hmm.
within that team. Where do you see and I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now.
Hmm.
The balance between the human experience, and we'll call it authentic intelligence, and artificial intelligence on the other side, because I think there's this other piece of this as well. I mean, you're
Yeah,
coming from a faith background. Um, it's I'm even trying to bridge the philosophical debate.
it's tough.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really interesting about accounting that most people don't understand is the guidelines associated with accounting are extremely vague. they'll use language like if reasonable, right?
Mm.
If consistent, you know. So there's a lot of judgment that has to go into crafting a strategy, and I'm gonna maybe make some, you know, take some of the data points and make them irrational by saying this, but it's almost like in accounting, as long as you treat the similar situations the same all the time, it really doesn't matter how you do it,
Hmm.
right? And that doesn't hold true in every instance, but it's more about picking a strategy and sticking with that strategy and committing to that strategy and making sure that it's used consistently in your approach. And so, how I think AI is going to impact the accounting function is you're going to see the components that are not related to that discernment or that strategy discussion. They are going to continually be consolidated, if not eliminated, from the equation.
Hmm.
Therefore, it's going to make the decision making and the strategy around how you implement your accounting best practices even more critical. And the speed at which you do it and the with the accuracy in which you do it is super critical. I mean, you'll find that large companies, they may have variances in their accounting, but they'll use language like, well, that was immaterial, right? Well, immateriality, my company as a whole is immaterial to some large organizations based in Houston. Like
Hmm.
my entire organization is a rounding error, right? So it really depends on where you're at in that value chain as to how much um, the data input, how accurate it really has to be.
Hmm.
So where I see things going is that we're just going to expect more from the accounting function.
Mm.
Where today maybe it's more about just uh, an accounting for what's already occurred. It might become more anticipatory, which tends to lean to the finance side of the house.
Some more
But
force.
I see maybe more the accounting and finance function becoming more of a blended function over time. But who knows? I mean, we
Yes.
really don't know. One thing I do know is, the first form of AI in the accounting world was this RPA. You know, all these bots that organizations put in place, and everyone, rightfully so, rushed to automate tasks that were consistently being executed to. And I know many organizations now that are trying to unwind those.
Right.
And I think that there's a slippery slope around what AI can do and how. I think by the time anyone would get an agent implemented, it's likely outdated. So there's just this continuing evolution, and I
Yeah.
don't know where we're going to land and
Yeah.
what's going to be steady state, but it's going to be interesting to see. Sometimes being the first mover in this space is great for learning, but it's not necessarily great for sustainability.
I'm so glad to hear you say that and use your perspective that you have, because it's like we're in this AI hype cycle. It's like everyone's just hyping this stuff up, and it's like, well, we need to step back and just start asking a few questions. And if we're asking the questions, it doesn't mean that we don't see where the opportunity is, but it's, to your point,
Yeah.
RPA. We're starting to unroll some of that. It's like, just because we can doesn't mean that we should
Hmm.
question. I think it comes back to your point before about really thinking through this strategically and what is the value creation on the other side of the equation.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, we're going to be doing things for the sake of doing things, and then
Hmm.
realize that maybe we shouldn't have done that after all. Maybe we should have paused, pondered, questioned, philosophized a little bit more, as opposed to just doing it. And but I think being curious though as well. I think I forgot who I was talking to recently about this, but the 70-20-10, it's like 70% of our investments are in the present, 10% of our investments are optimizing what we have in the present, sorry, 20% are optimizing what we have in the present, and then 10% come into the blue sky future thinking,
Hmm.
continuously iterating towards a future. When you think about the future, as we start to wrap up, what's the thing that you're most excited about, just with the work that you're doing, both as an entrepreneur, but then also too, just coming back to your family and your faith.
Um, yeah, I think what I'm most excited about is building, right? Um, prior to becoming a part of Taylor White in our acquisition last year, um, I had a desire to purchase the firm that I was previously with, and I, for a variety of reasons, I missed out on that opportunity. And so, um, you know, I've been committed for at least a decade now to building an organization that has sustainability and will provide opportunities to great people to grow their careers, provide for their families, feel safe and secure. And doing that on a larger scale is very exciting to me. You know, there's challenges that come along with that, right? That the average individual doesn't understand, and I didn't even understand. Becoming, you know, more so recently self-employed versus a W-2 employee with investment and leadership responsibilities.
Yes.
But providing that opportunity to other people to be able to count on something that is foundationally one of the biggest components of their life. Being able to provide that is very fulfilling to me. And seeing people take chances, make career changes, and then be successful is like a home run.
Yes.
And I've seen several people do that. I've seen people retire their spouses. I've seen people pay off their homes. Like, doing those things to me is like, if I have notches in my proverbial belt, right? Those are the things that I notch. Is, man, I was a part of helping someone do that, and that is very motivating to me, what I'm excited about.
Man, I really appreciate that perspective of building, because it almost takes our conversation full circle when we were talking before about, and it's the question I think for those watching and listening to perhaps pause and ponder as we continue to move further into the age of AI. Are you building on sand, or are you building on the rock? And I know that with the work that you're doing, you're building on the rock. So Rob, I really appreciate your perspective and the wisdom that you've shared, that you've gained over the years to help others continue to level up. If someone wants to connect with you, say hello, continue the conversation that we have started, what's the best way for them to reach out and say hello to you?
Yeah, you can either you can give me a call. I won't say my phone number here, but if you want to look me up on LinkedIn, it's Rob Robinson with Taylor White. If not, feel free to shoot me an email to robr@taylorwhite.com.
Connect with Rob, learn with Rob, level up with Rob. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you again for tuning in to learn, to grow, to level up together with Rob's unique wisdom. If you are a visionary B2B entrepreneur who wants to transform your past experiences, some of your most valuable assets, if you will, as an entrepreneur, if you want to transform those experiences into IP that elevates your influence and increases your income, send me a text right now, 832-240-1922, because I want to teach you. I want to show you how you can turn video content like this into a book that monetizes your unique wisdom.